Alrighty, hello. I can't even begin to explain how many times I filmed or have attempted to film this video. I literally went, oh yeah, let me not take my ADHD meds. I need to give my brain a break. Class got canceled, yada, yada, yada. But I seem to forget that when you have ADHD, your brain never really takes breaks, So I don't know what my mind was doing when it thought that was a good idea, but here we are. If you're not into bookish content of any kind, I don't know how this video ended up being suggested to you. I doubt that you searched this up at all. So, despite how you might have gotten to this channel, welcome. Hope you stay for a while. Hope you subscribe. If you aren't new to this channel and you've been subscribed to me, thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. I am Ren Taler. I make videos about books, writing, business, hopefully commentary. I have one video in particular that I'm really excited about, but I'm not going to give too much away just in case that falls through. And I don't want that to be out in the universe as something I did not finish. Today, I really wanted to talk about overconsumption on Book Talk specifically because I've been seeing so many videos about it, but more so I wanted to talk about special editions. And this is a very niche ADHD type of rant that I'm going to be doing. So please forgive me if that's something you're not into. You're more than welcome to click off of this video. Trust me, I understand. If you didn't know, special editions have been a topic of conversation, I think mainly because publishing companies are starting to realize the value and the demand that people have for these types of editions of the books that these publishers are selling. And some might say it's gotten a little bit out of hand. I am inclined to agree, at least to some extent, but I am also someone who has fallen prey, if you will, to this as well. I love collecting special editions, collecting books in general is just a hobby of mine. And I do think that is separate from reading. Those are two completely different things, but we will get into that a little bit later on in the video. I first wanted to talk about different ways that people can get special editions and how the prices vary, because some of the criticism is that publishing companies or subscription boxes will upcharge a lot for these special editions. It's just some sentiments I've been hearing, or more so, not even just with special editions, but just books in general. Like they just cost a lot, like $25. And then you're going to add some sprayed edges and charge like $30 plus Canadian, mind you. That is a little insane. That I understand. But I think in some cases where maybe you're buying from a subscription box and there's other things that are coming with it, that I don't think is nearly as bad as when you charge almost probably double of what the book would normally cost because, you sprayed it. I don't know. That's just a personal thing. Of course, I don't know from my end what a book will actually cost to make, but I doubt it costs that much. But from a business perspective, I also understand why they do that. It can just be a little disheartening as a reader, as someone who likes to collect books, seeing the prices go up like that for books in general. And then we've got the special edition tacked on to the title. And it's like, it just isn't economically viable for a lot of people, suffice it to say. So that brings me to the first way of getting special editions, and that's through subscription boxes, which I have subscriptions to both Fairy Loot and Illumicrate, and they both cost around $80 Canadian, I think. $60, give or take, in American. Fairy Loot has its perks, and I'm talking about the boxes as a whole, not just the version of those subscriptions where you can just get the book, because that is also an option, by the way. But with Fairy Loot, they do offer special editions of books outside of their monthly subscription. So whether or not you're subscribed to the box that they also offer, I believe, an adult subscription and a YA. I'm subscribed to the YA personally, and that's what was available to sign up for, I think. I can't remember if they do adult subscriptions. I'm pretty sure they do. I know Illumicrate does. But anyway, they sell special editions of books outside of their monthly subscriptions. So basically what that means is even if you're not an active subscriber, you can still buy those special editions from them. But if you are an active subscriber, then you can get early access essentially. And that is a very nice perk. I've already managed to snag Legends and Lattes and Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree. And those copies they say will come signed, not digitally signed, but like actually signed by the author. And so because they have these things up for sale ahead of time and they give those extra few hours or days or whatever it is to their active subscribers first, it's a lot easier to get those special editions because of that. And then most of the time, I think they sell out fairly quickly. It also depends on if the book's super popular. But that's just something to think about, that when it comes to obtaining these special editions of books, there's usually some added like benefit to it as a result. So it's not just one book, it's you get multiple over a certain period of time, and you get wider access to more when you're willing to spend that money. With Illumicrate, I've noticed it's the same sort of deal, by the way, but I've noticed with the boxes that I've gotten so far, it seems that the books that they include are not readily available in Canada, and that's where I live, if that wasn't obvious. They also don't really put special editions up for sale, at least not in Canada and the US. Also compared to Fairy Loot, they do. I know so it's Illumicrate, and then they have like another sort of sub subscription, you know what I mean? Like a subscription within a subscription called Afterlight, but I can't remember if you can subscribe to Afterlight without having already been subscribed to Illumicrate. It is worth noting that Fairy Loot and Illumicrate are both UK companies, so it makes sense that they're, at least with Illumicrate and their subscription, that they're going to want to promote more local authors. The only issue I have with that, if anything, is the fact that I can't get an ebook or an audiobook or anything like that. And as someone with a processing disorder, having the special edition as my only way of reading the book, it's obviously better than not having the book at all, but I'm the kind of person who doesn't like to really touch my special editions and read with them, which I know is part of the criticism, that people think it's stupid to get a special edition, especially if you're not going to use it or read it. But I want it to stay as in good of a condition as it can for as long as it can, right? So I don't think there's anything wrong with that necessarily either. But when it comes to situations like this where I don't have access to the ebook or the audiobook, having those processing disorders that I have, it just makes the reading experience a little less enjoyable. And I don't like the idea of compromising the way I enjoy a book just because of that reason. But I don't really have much of a choice in this situation. On the flip side, it does mean that the book is going to be a little more rare and harder to get, at least in this part of the world. So if you want to think about it that way, it's like, ooh, I have a little bit of exclusivity there. It means that no one else I know is really going to have that book unless they're also a subscriber, which is also cool. But at that point, I don't really care. I just want an audiobook, man. And if the books get popular enough, I'm sure that they'll probably get picked up by an American publisher anyway. But I don't want to have to wait for that. I don't have time for that. Good sir, I need a drink. So one of the other ways that you can get special editions is by going to used bookstores and or websites. In the States, you have websites and apps like Pango Books, Biblio.com, which is a website that allows small bookstore owners to connect with consumers. There is also thriftbooks.com. Here in Canada, if I want to buy special items, my go-to is eBay, which of course you have to be very careful if you do go down the route of shopping on eBay, because as I'm sure we've all heard at some point, a horror story of someone getting scammed, maybe not even for buying a book, tickets to somewhere or anything really. It, at least in the past, seemed like it was fairly easy to get scammed, but now eBay has implemented 100% money back guarantee, which is really great. But I'm wondering what the process is there, is if you do end up getting scammed, like what that process is like. In regards to buying books and my own experience doing so, it hasn't been bad at all. Always check the reviews of the sellers. If it's a seller that doesn't have a lot of reviews, if any at all, it's not to say that you should avoid them at all costs. I'm actually someone who's trying to sell a set of books on eBay, but we'll get to that in a second. It's just a good idea to check reviews. And with biblio.com, I have ordered a book from there as well. Biblio is a bit different because it's a website that just facilitates the connection between the used bookstore and the buyer who wants to maybe buy a special edition of something. I got a special edition of John Dies at the End, and that's a book that my fiance loves, and I was able to get him an edition that only had 500 copies of it made at all. And it was also signed by the author, which I think is pretty cool. I've heard some semi-negative reviews of some people's experiences. Some are just downright, they didn't even ship the book in the first place. And it is worth noting in that scenario that because it's just a website where multiple booksellers and used bookstores can sell through, it's a lot easier to have issues because of that. And it's not just one big company trying to sell through their e-commerce website. Because one day you could have a purchase that ends up working out well because they send it on time, the product is in good condition, etc. But then you could also end up in a situation where the next day you go to buy a book from there and it's a completely different seller and they are no good at their job, clearly. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the different types of special editions that you can get. So in my opinion, there are two different types of special editions. There are the pretty kind you get from publishers or third-party subscription boxes that usually have sprayed edges or some sort of silver and gold embossing, and sometimes they come signed. Then there are the books that are special editions because they are older editions that are out of print. I have an example for you, for my own. You could call it stupidity, but I don't think so. But of course, I'm going to be a little bit biased because it's me. Admittedly, I did go on a bit of a bender these past couple of weeks, at least as of when I'm filming this video. If you follow me on TikTok or even look at my YouTube shorts, because I posted this video on there as well, then you would know that I was able to get the out of print mirror editions of the Chestnut Spring series. And I was able to get the majority of the books in that style from Amazon for pretty cheap. They cost about $20 to $30. No, not 30. Definitely not 30. $20 to $23 a piece. However, if you try to get those books on eBay, they're on average selling for $60 a piece, which is just like, Jesus Christ. It's crazy. I know because I'm trying to sell a second set of those books on eBay right now. I'm trying to sell them for a little bit more than I normally would, but I'm also probably going to lower the price because I don't want to charge people too much because I know what it's like to be in that position when you are trying to find a book. So I'm probably going to lower the price. And if not, like if I don't sell them, then I'm probably just going to sell them to a friend or something like that. And while I was trying to look for the first book, Flawless, in the original mirror covers, I noticed that it was impossible to find in the first place. I spent weeks trying to look for it until I saw someone selling the entire series for a few $100s. I messaged the person asking if I could possibly buy the first book from them, only since I already owned the remainder of the series in that cover. I didn't want to buy a whole new set just because I wanted the first book. But they replied saying that they wanted to try and sell the first book with the rest of the series at first. And if they weren't able to sell the books that way, then they would reach back out to me and then they would try and work something out. I understand where they were coming from completely. My problem right now is that second set that I have, I'm trying to sell for whatever price I have it at right now. I can't even remember. And because I don't have the first book in the series, I think that's stopping people from wanting to buy it. And I've had to find that out the hard way. So if you couldn't already guess by that statement, I did end up buying the entire series from that person anyway, because they had the first book in that cover. And I know a lot of people are going to think that that is absolutely ridiculous. You know, why would you ever do something like that? And to be honest, I don't really know. Other than that, I just really like the way the covers look. I think they look fun. The series takes place in Canada, where I'm from, not the same province, not even close, but I still loved the idea of reading about a romance that takes place in Canada, because as a Canadian, I never got any of that growing up, and it's just nice to see it now. And I want to support the author to the best of my ability, even though buying a lot of the books I have from her so far are secondhand. Going forward, I want to do my best to support her when I can. And if you can't tell, I actually have almost the entire Chestnut Spring series up there right now. I have the entire series in the mirror covers, which are also known as the discrete covers, because the series was also published with actual people on the cover. And those are considered to be like, well, the not as discrete versions. And then I also have the versions that are traditionally published, because Elsie Silver also started out as a traditionally published author self-published author. And I love supporting indie authors, because I am someone who will end up being an indie author myself one day, because I don't plan on going traditional, at least as of right now. And I love the idea of sort of hyping up the indie publishing world, because I feel like it doesn't get enough credit as it should, but that's besides the point. I just loved the idea of owning the self-published versions as well as the traditionally published versions. And I'm reading Flawless right now. So the traditionally published version of Flawless is missing from here as well as that version of Reckless, which is, I think, the second last book in the series. Sort of a side tangent, but I just, love those books with all my heart, I swear. But yeah, I'm reading Flawless for the first time right now. And that's another thing, is I bought this entire series without having really read it first. And I know that's also a stupid thing to have done, but I just have that gut feeling. I know this is going to be a 5-star series overall for me, and I'm really excited to just binge it. And the reason why I also got all the various editions is because I like to have those special editions, and I like to have my reading copy. And the reading copy is the one that I would consider lending to friends if the conversation ever came up. Although for someone like myself, I don't always like to lend out books. That's just a personal thing, especially if it is a quote unquote special edition. And like I was saying, I know this has been absolutely insane, but I can't help myself. And Flawless is just chef's kiss. I also wanted to talk about how, on that topic of a book or a copy of a book becoming a special edition just because it aged, I also have all the OG covers of the A Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J. Maas, but that is simply because I started reading her books like almost 10 years ago. I would say 8 to be more specific. And those are the books that got me into reading fantasy specifically, but also that much further along in my journey to being a writer. And the reason why these copies are so valuable is simply just because they have aged. And I didn't buy them with the intention of, 8 years, decade from now, TikTok will be a thing and, I'll be able to sell these. That is not why I got these books. And I have 2 OG copies of A Court of Mist and Fury and A Court of Wings and Ruin, and 1 copy of ACOTAR, the first book. And I have 1 copy of ACOMAF and ACOWAR that are signed. One of them, my copy of ACOWAR, to be more specific, is signed and personalized by the author. And with that being said, those books, those signed editions, are worth hundreds of dollars at this point. But I would never sell them just because they're special editions and I know other people would want them. That doesn't mean I'm going to sell them. And I do feel like when people criticize others for liking to buy special editions of books, they kind of miss the point when they make that criticism, because I don't know if they ever really considered that some people do genuinely just want to have the books because they love them. I wouldn't have gotten those if I didn't like the author, and the other versions I have of her books that are considered to be more valuable because they're older, I got them at the time because I just loved reading her books. But then I guess, I don't know, in more recent events, buying an entire series in different versions is a little unhinged, and I can recognize that at least. I guess it just depends on the situation, really. And I know not everyone who makes that criticism is like, you're crazy, you're stupid, blah, blah. They just have a broader concern of, people buying books for the sake of buying them because they look pretty. And I can understand where that concern comes from as well. It just, if it doesn't hurt anyone, I really don't think it's that big of a deal. And I guess that kind of brings us to what the problem is with special editions and why they can kind of be a bit of a financial burden on some people. But I kind of mentioned that earlier when I talked about how, depending on where you're buying them from, the prices could be really marked up. Other readers or other buyers of the book will buy the special edition, mark it up on like eBay or something, and sell it for so much more. I saw this a lot with Sarah J. Maas's newest release. A House of Flame and Shadow, and I saw people buying up her books and selling them for hundreds of dollars more than what the original price was. And that just kind of, I don't know, broke my heart a little bit. I could see people were disheartened by the fact that they were trying to find these other special editions of that book, and they were only able to find them on eBay, for example, for a lot more money than they were expecting. Because if you didn't know, House of Flame and Shadow came out with a bunch of different versions from Target, Barnes & Noble, Indigo. I don't know if there were any other versions, but there probably were. And people were just trying to find different ways to get those editions. And it was hard because for some of us, like myself, you wouldn't necessarily be able to get the Barnes & Noble edition or the Target edition, because in Canada, we don't have either of those stores. I doubt that it was necessarily Sarah J. Maas's fault for that. I do think that like the publisher probably wanted to capitalize on her fame and the amount of people they knew would want to read the book and all those special editions. I think from a business perspective, it's really smart. From a consumer's perspective, it's a little, I don't love it. I think people have just started to kind of see the whole special edition wave, if you will, as another form of like fast fashion. That's a word that has been thrown around with Iron Flame, which, if you don't know, is the second book in the Fourth Wing series. It's called the Empyrean series, actually. Anyways, it's by Rebecca Yarros, and there was only 6 months between when Fourth Wing came out and Iron Flame was released. And people had received books with misprints, like, you know, I think some people got maps printed wrong in their books and things like that. I do believe that the publisher has offered to amend that issue in some way. I don't know if they're providing refunds or replacements or something of the sort, but I do remember seeing a video of the author saying, hey, if you got a misprint of this book, fill out the form and we're all good. And if anyone can provide more information on that, definitely leave that down below. I would love to learn more about that situation. But what I wanted to say on that is more so just how I don't think people realize how long it takes to actually write a book. I don't think it was made from start to finish in those 6 months. Considering the first book was optioned for TV back in like December of 2022, like it was sold to MGM or Amazon Prime. I don't know if they work together, but anyway, I would imagine that Rebecca Yarros would have had started Iron Flame at that point, at the very least. I obviously can't guarantee that that's how things were working at that point, but I do feel like it would be worth acknowledging that, hey, maybe she didn't, like the book would have been written at least a little bit before Fourth Wing came out, right? I have been in that position before where I ordered the entire like hardcover set of the Throne of Glass series in the original covers, and my copy of Tower of Dawn was missing the first like 50 pages or so, I think, either at the beginning or the end. Like I know it was missing a lot of pages, and I was like, I remember opening it and being like, that's kind of weird, but it's literally been like 6 years or so since that book came out, so I doubt I'd get a refund. The reason why the publishing company that is responsible for Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, respectively, are being accused of adopting fast fashion practices, like I was kind of saying, is it has to simply do with the fact of the quick turnaround time that the second book in the Fourth Wing series, Iron Flame, had. It was fairly quick, I think, more so than what we're used to. And people just had a lot of problem with that. And the thing is with fast fashion is, with certain companies that I'm sure you already know about, they will make clothes quickly and cheaply, and they allegedly don't pay their workers a fair price and all that. And I can see where that comparison is coming as well. I just don't think that's quite right, because books can't be written that quickly. They just don't get made, and they just don't get written in, well, okay, they probably could be written in 6 months, but considering the condition that I at least got my copies, because I got multiple, weren't like egregiously bad to the point where I was like, oh my God, there's no way that this was written before that 6 months, like I could tell, like at least like some effort was put into the writing. Not some effort, like it's I thought it was fine. Haven't finished it yet, but from what I've read so far, I did not mind it at all. I actually think I might enjoy it a little bit, but that's besides the point. I just don't necessarily agree with that comparison. That's really what I mean to say. Went on a bit of a tangent there. Sorry about that. I completely forgot to mention Entangled Publishing and its subsidiary Red Tower, which is responsible for publishing Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. They have started this trend where they release special editions right off the bat. And some attribute Fourth Wing's success to the fact that it was first released with sprayed edges and dragons on it, which I think is really interesting. Obviously, there is some merit to that, I think, because the publishing company would not have implemented that if they didn't think it was going to help sell the book. But in terms of its continued success, I believe we have to attribute that to the writing itself and the story. My final thoughts are special editions are fun, but on an individual level, I'm not going to fault myself for wanting cool looking books. Collecting and reading are two completely different things. That's something I mentioned at the beginning of this video. Some people like to read and they will prefer to do so cheaply by borrowing from a library. Kudos to you, by the way, because I cannot do that. If I'm going to read a book, I want to own it physically. I don't know what it is. I just like holding a physical book in my hand. And it's funny because one of the videos that has made my channel grow within the past year is my Kindle video. I still use it. Don't worry. I like using my Kindle a lot, actually. I kind of love it. And it is one of my prized possessions. But with that being said, it still won't ever beat physical copies. It's just when you start to run out of space and money, it's just nice to be able to find different alternatives. I also have Kindle Unlimited, so that helps. I'm also paying for a wedding this year. So when I say I have no money, it's like, okay, I have some, it's just going towards that instead, you know? And collecting means you probably like the idea of, you know, setting those books down on the shelf and just getting to look at them. Like, look at that shelf behind me. That is absolutely beautiful. And I'm so proud of myself for getting this set up together. I took way too long in making this look the way it did and getting it to a point where I liked it. But anyway, this video is getting way too long. I spent way too long trying to film it. But with that being said, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you could at least understand where I'm coming from. But if you didn't, let me know respectfully in the comments down below. Make sure to like, subscribe, maybe click the little bell next to the subscribe button to be notified anytime that I post. Hope you have a great day and or night whenever you are watching this. And I'll see you guys in my next video. I don't know why I say it like that. I'm not going to see you. You're going to see me. You get the idea. Bye.